the new CBC.
Na mtazamaji, kama ulivyowasikia, hao ni maafisa wa mashirika mbalimbali pamoja na wale ambao wanawakilisha sekta ya elimu hapo, wakiwasihi wananchi kuendelea tu kudumisha amani kufuatia hali ilivyo kwa sasa. Trevor, nadhani katika hizi picha mbili ama hizi video mbili ambazo tumeziona hivi sasa, tunaona watu wanasisitiza umuhimu wa amani na kuweza kufanya mambo kwa utaratibu unaofaa ili kuhakikisha kwamba baada ya kura maisha yanaendelea kawaida. Kuna kitu ambacho ningependa kujua pengine kutoka kwa wageni wetu. Kwa hivi sasa taifa liko hivi. Ndio tunasema kwamba kumetulia, lakini hatujui kumetulia kiasi gani. Ndio maana unaona mpaka wale wametoka wakaja kuanza kusihi watu. Je, kwa yule ambaye atatangazwa kuwa mshindi wa urais katika kinyang'anyiro hicho, unadhani ni hatua gani kubwa na muhimu ambayo anastahili kuichukua wakati huu ili kuhakikisha kwamba wananchi, taifa linadumisha amani na utangamano?
Eric, that has to be you.
Jukumu la kwanza ya la lolote yule ambaye atashinda itakuwa kuleta kila mtu pamoja. Baada ya kuchaguliwa, unakuwa kiongozi wa wale ambao walikupigia kura na wale ambao pia hawakukupigia kura. Kwa hivyo kuna mengi pia ambayo unaweza tumia kukusaidia kwa wale ambao kwa mawaidha ama zile mbinu ambazo wale washindani wako walikuwa wamepanga pia kutekeleza wakiingia kwenye serikali. So kitu cha kwanza itakuwa kunyenyekea na kukubali ushindi, na kitu moja pia ya kuwa kujitokeza mshindi katika malumbano kama haya ambayo takwimu ambazo zinatokea kwa saizi zaonyesha itakuwa kwa ushindani mdogo sana. Inamaanisha kuwa kuna karibu nusu ya wale ambao walipiga kura walikuwa wanaona kuwa mwenzako angefaa zaidi ya wewe. So kwa hivyo lazima pia unyenyekee kwa wale ambao wamepoteza, na pia kuelewa kuwa wale ambao walikuwa wanakusupport vile wanavyokuwa na passion, ndio vile wale ambao walikuwa na msupport yule ambaye amepoteza wako na passion. Kwa hivyo lazima uelewe hisia zao na ukue humble, uwalete pamoja, useme sisi wote ni wa Kenya. Uchaguzi umefanyika, sasa tushikane mikono, tufanye nini? Tujenge taifa. Kwa sababu unaingia uongozini ili uweze kutumikia taifa la Kenya. Na uwezi kutumikia taifa kama unafanya wale ambao waliunga mrengo mwingine wasikie ni kama wako nje ya serikali. So kutakuwa na yule ambaye atakayeshinda atakuwa naangaliwa kwa ukaribu sana. Siku zake za kwanza, yale appointments ambazo atafanya, ile maneno ambayo atasema, mahali ambapo atakwenda, kutakuwa kunaangaliwa kwa undani kuona kama analeta inchi pamoja ama anaangalia tu kule ambao walimsupport. Wale ambao walimsupport watakuwa na matarajio makubwa. Kwa hivyo sasa ambaye anaingia ana kazi ngumu, kwa sababu wale ambao walimsupport wana matarajio makubwa, wanasema sasa ni wakati wetu wa serikali, tunatakiwa tupewe viti, tunatakiwa tufanye hii, mimi nimefanya hii. Lakini pia kuna nusu nyingine la nchi ambayo lazima iliwekwe kwenye serikali. Kwa hivyo ni jambo ngumu, lakini natumaini kuwa ule ambaye atashinda atanyoshea wale ambao amewashinda mkono, awalete pamoja ili tukue na taifa moja na tuweze kuendeleza amani ambayo tumekuwa nayo nyakati zilizopita. Na kwa wakati mwingi si usema ile amani ambayo tuko nayo pengine si amani ambayo iko ndani, ni ile skin deep.
Kweli.
Kwa hivyo sasa ana jukumu la kuonyesha kuwa si skin deep na ile matendo ambayo atafanya immediately and for perhaps the first 30 days wakati atakuwa anatengeneza serikali yake, in the event that hakutakuwa na petition ya kuchallenge the results.
Pengine daktari na yeye anaweza kuchangia vipi hilo?
You can use the English language.
Asante sana, but I'll say it in English. I think this election we're going to come out with a winner and the loser. But I don't think in real sense we really have a loser, because when you look at all these political manifestos, the manifestos of the two candidates, they are very similar. They're all looking at how can we look at our agricultural productivity, how can we deal with the youth unemployment, how do we deal with corruption, or how do we provide social welfare? Both of them talk about how providing the social welfare, how do we overhaul our health system? The only difference is that do we have the trust for either of the candidates to implement what they've said? So I think the country should be prepared. First of all, our leaders, when we have a winner and the loser, I think we should concede defeat. And by doing so, we also need to manage the expectations of the voters, because you have two sides whereby one has declared, oh, we've won this election. The other ones are also saying we've lost this election. Some are saying we'll be on the street till the day the results are announced. So really, the person who's going to win this election has a very huge responsibility on how do you start reconciling, how do you start preaching peace, because the election has been a long process. We've insulted each other, and what the Kenyans want is like they want a peaceful country, they want to put food on the table, they want their children and the youth to get employment. So if we really get into this message, then I think our message is peace, and how do we move ahead?
Yeah, and I'll say there, mwana swali muhimu hilo ulilouliza na ndasalia hapo. Swali si mbaya sana, najaribu kidogo. Eric, the issue here is when you talk about the appointments, what are we going to base those appointments on? Should there be some ethno-dynamism that goes into it, or should it be based on merit? Because it's true what you've mentioned earlier on, that anybody who is elected, all eyes will be on that person. How do you bridge the divide, the people who did not vote for you? And how do you appoint the people who are somehow deemed to be your appointment or your cabinet?
You know, if you look at the previous administration or the outgoing administration, their appointments in terms of getting the face of Kenya, they performed dismally.
Dismally?
Yes, it was a poor performance, because it is actually a constitutional edit that public appointments must reflect not just the gender question, but the face of Kenya. And so therefore, we will be extremely keen in the next series of appointments to ensure that the constitutional requirements do not just remain paper requirements, but they are actually brought into life in the appointments that are going to be made, and that we'll be looking at the regional representation, the gender representation, and also noting that we have an extremely well-qualified and diverse youthful population, that will be reflected, that the persons who are enabled differently will also be represented in government, so that we have a government that, one, of course, looks at merit, but also beyond the question of merit, also looks at giving us an appointment or public appointments that largely reflect and resonate with the face of Kenya.
Yeah, but Dr. Molo, how do you balance that? Because there are those who say that the political foot soldiers, the ones who probably lost in the elections on whichever side, are the ones who are then given priority in terms of appointment. Should that be the case?
I don't think that should be the case, but that's what really has been happening. And even during these elections, you know, when now the politician came and revealed to us how they formed the cabinet, they said that 50 was for William Ruto, and 50 was for Uhuru Kenyatta. So I don't think we should have something kind of like that. And what about those people, the representation of these people coming onto the cabinet? Can they be vetted within the parliament? But some of the problems we've had is that even the parliament can be compromised. So even if we're going to have the new cabinet, if we do not change the process of electing these people, and sometimes when you elect people, we just say it's regional just because it's the name. You know, but really we need a diverse leadership. We need to have the senior citizens. We need to have women. We need to have the youth. We need to have people with disability. We also have to look at the other vulnerable community, the marginalized community, and ensure that we have inclusivity. So it's a very strong message to Kenyans will be sending to this new leadership that we cannot continue to do things the way we've done it in the past. So this new government has to do things differently, and not in terms of appointment. We are coming to a point whereby the debt burden is so high. We're just coming from the COVID, whereby a lot of people have lost their jobs and the businesses are not doing well. And the Ukraine and Russia issue have not done so well for the economy. So it's about the appointment, and even how do we raise funds to actually do some of the activities that they promise to Kenyans. So it called for a new way of doing things and breaking away from the past.
Yeah, and that breaking away from the past, then, how does it end up uniting the country? Because that is the main concern right now, what Mwana was asking earlier on. What should the person coming in do to bridge this divide? If it's not on the appointments, then what else?
The appointments should be inclusive, because I think one of the reasons why even our politics is so polarized is the issue of inclusivity. And even the issue of inclusivity, that's where you see that people wanted devolved governance. We want power to be much closer to us. So the issue of inclusivity is at the center of this politics, and we cannot pretend that we've solved this issue. This is an issue which is underlying there. No one wants to talk about it. No one really wants to solve it. But for the new leader coming in here, one of the legacy, if they have the 5 years coming, is how are you going to sort the issue of inclusivity? And this must be reflected in the appointment in the cabinet, in the ambassador, and at different levels, even in the corporate. Sometimes you see election losers are being appointed to manage the corporates, and you ask, why are the corporates really not delivering? Because it's the way you actually appoint the leaders of these corporates. So inclusivity is going to be at the center of these elections.
Yeah, Eric, because the issue here is how then do you reward your political supporters and still capture the face of Kenya, like what you're saying? Because we've seen all public appointments tend to be the people who lost in the elections but were considered foot soldiers to the person who's won.
It's a delicate balancing act, but the luxury we have is that it is not us who are supposed to balance that, that we are actually watching the person who has been given the responsibility. And for me, I hope that the president-elect will be able to appreciate the weight of the responsibility that he has been given. That it is not about repayment of political loyalty. It is actually about the country. The problem we've had is that we have over-politicized our politics to the extent that even resource allocation is politicized. So I'm hoping that the president-elect would take a break from the past and look at it and say, my first consideration would be merit, because you are a Kenyan. And you know, some of us did not choose where we were born. Yeah? And remember that the question of inclusion starts from the point of perception. That we expect that when you appoint a certain tribe that did not support you, then in the public eye, they feel that they are included in your government. That you may actually take resources to that region or take development to that region, but until they perceive that they have been included in your government from the appointments that you make, you would not have achieved inclusivity.
So it's largely a game of perception then also?
It is also, yes, it first starts as a perception, because we also have significant challenges in this country. We all know where our economy is. We all know that we are not generating sufficient jobs in the economy to meet the population that is, the ever increasing and the fast increasing youthful population in the country. And I think the statistics are almost somewhere between 30 and 45% being below 35 and below. And so when you have such significant challenges within the country, the people may take a bit of time before they can actually feel development, or they can actually see development, because it takes a longer period. It is a mix of so many things: resources, policies, plans, and it is also dictated by factors that sometimes are outside your control in terms of the global economy.
Yeah.
And so the first point that people can actually feel that they belong to a government is when they see that members of their tribes have been appointed to government. When they see that the persons who have been appointed from the opposing tribes have not just been appointed because perhaps they had their loyalty to the president-elect, but actually because they have merit and they deserve it. So the moment you do that, then you begin healing the country. You start lessening the blow of a winner takes it all. And I say this because, and people have always said, who is the leader of opposition? Because, you know, the leader of opposition, it strictly belongs to a parliamentary system. But in a system, or in the presidential system that we have the leader of majority who represents, sometimes can be the political party with the highest number of seats that is actually not in government.
Yeah.
So you know, in a presidential system, that can work. So that you find the leader of minority cannot be actually called the leader of opposition, because the leader of minority can actually come from the ruling party.
Yeah.
So once we understand that, then you know that the leader of opposition as we know it sometimes would be actually outside parliament, because the leaders of our parties as we know them are often our tribal leaders. And once we get that distinction, then we begin to understand why it is extremely important that the leaders of the political parties who are representative of the tribal leadership, who essentially, because if they don't win government, will be outside government completely, because they will not even be sitting in parliament. The only way then you can assuage the feelings of those tribes is by ensuring that your appointments take into account very, very critical considerations that have been put in the Constitution, that they reflect the face of Kenya, and that you do not just pick those that supported you. Because even when you pick those, the members of the other tribes who supported you, you do not assuage the perceptions of the other members who largely voted for their tribal leader but are now outside parliament and executive as it is.
Yeah, you want to jump in before you take
I just like the fact that inclusivity sometimes is a perception. You know, you can elect all these ministers and they're really not serving their communities. They're involved in corrupt practices. But when the time comes, maybe like, you know, they're told you step aside or something, then they go back to their community and they say, oh, our communities is under attack and all that. So it's also going to call for the people of Kenya to look that, you know, whether you come from Rift Valley, you come from Central, you're in Nyanza, what you want for agricultural sector. You want the prices of fertilizers to come down. You want subsidized seeds, whether it's healthcare, and you want national health insurance, which works. So we have to move from the perception of like, you people are included, and it's just serving the elites and the middle class, but it's not serving the people.